He saw the man walking up the long dirt path just after sunrise, coat frayed at the cuffs, hat tilted low. Didn't knock, just stood in the yard, staring up at the crooked chimney like it owed him something. The father opened the door half an inch. "You the one who sent the word?" The man didn't answer. "Do you fix chimneys or not?" Still nothing, just a slow nod. Then the man raised a finger and pointed at the roof. "Ladders behind the shed," the father muttered. The man didn't move right away, just looked at the house, the bricks, the windows like he'd seen them before. Then he walked slowly toward the shed, boots crunching frost. The father shut the door behind him tight, poured himself coffee, sat down, hands rough around the chipped mug. The house felt smaller than usual. Chimney hadn't been used since. He didn't finish the thought. The air inside still carried the ghost of her hair, her breath. He looked toward the fireplace, stone black, hearth cold. Outside, metal scraped stone. The ladder went up slowly. The man didn't talk, didn't call for tools, just climbed. Then the tune started, soft, like the wind trying to speak. High whistle, clear as a bell. It drifted down the flue like smoke. The father froze. His mug shook. He leaned forward. It was the same pitch, same rise and fall, the same exact tune his daughter whispered in the dark just before the fever took her. He stood up too fast. The mug cracked against the table. Coffee spilled. He didn't care. He ran out the door. The man was still on the roof, kneeling near the chimney, humming that goddamn tune like it belonged to him. "Hey!" The whistler didn't flinch, just kept at it. Knees steady, head bowed. The father stepped into the yard, voice louder. "Where'd you learn that?" No answer. I said, "Where the hell do you hear that song?" The man turned slightly, one gloved hand resting on the brick edge. He tilted his head, like he was listening for something inside the chimney. Then he hummed again. Same tune, same quiet, breathy pull. The father's chest twisted. "She made that up," he said. "She was 6. No one taught her. She sang it when the fever took her voice. You understand what I'm saying?" The man climbed down slowly, one foot, then the other. No rush, no words. The father stepped back. "Have you been here before?" he asked. "You know this house?" The man didn't answer. He walked past him toward the front steps. Boots left no mud, just weight. He pointed to the firebox inside, through the open door. Then he looked at the father, face shadowed under his brim. "You hear me?" the father snapped. Nothing. The man ducked into the house like it was his, crouched near the hearth. He tapped a brick, scratched lightly at the mortar, then stood and turned to face the room. The whistle started again, this time from inside. It came through the walls. The father backed up. He could feel it more than hear it now, under his feet, in the beams. A slow pulling sound curling through floorboards like breath behind a locked door. "You fix chimneys or do something else?" The man walked to the door, stopped in the frame. I looked back. His eyes were colorless, not white, not blue, just gone. He stepped out into the light and sat cross-legged in the dirt. The tune didn't stop. The father walked back inside, shut the door soft. His knees felt loose. He sat, breathing shallow, reached under the table. His hand found the journal, hers. He hadn't opened it since the day she stopped breathing. The pages stuck together, dried tears. He flipped until one caught his eye. A sketch. Crayon black and red. A tall figure on a roof. Mouth open. Sound curling like smoke from a chimney. Under it, a sentence in her uneven hand. He fixes it from the inside. His hands went cold. He dropped the book. Outside, the whistle changed pitch. The father grabbed his coat, stormed back out, heart hammering his ribs. "You knew her?" he demanded. "You from the creek town? You work with Danner?" The man didn't blink. "Say something." The whistle never stopped. His mouth didn't move. It was coming from somewhere else now. Maybe the chimney, maybe the ground. The father dropped to his knees, grabbed a fistful of dirt, let it fall. Then whispered, "What did she tell you?" The man just hummed, same pace, same key. "You bring her back?" the father asked. "Is that what this is?" The man stood. I turned toward the house. I walked past him again. No words, no sound except the whistle that wouldn't end. The father stayed on the ground, hands shaking, his daughter's voice in his head, clear now. That little breathy tune, rising like smoke into the chimney that never warmed them again. He looked up. The man had vanished. but the tune kept playing from inside the walls. The morning held no silence. The whistle still slid through the walls, threading the beams like veins. The father hadn't slept. He sat slumped in the chair, eyes on the cold fireplace, hands trembling over the wood grain. The journal burned in his thoughts, though he hadn't touched it yet. The whistler hadn't moved. He was there, on the ground by the hearth, cross-legged, head bowed like a man in prayer. Every few breaths he let out that tune, steady as a clock, low and cutting. It filled the room, then pulled back, then seeped again through the stones. The father stood finally. His boots scraped the floor. He walked to the hearth, leaned down and pried his fingers under the loose stone. It shifted with a dry groan. Ash spilled up from beneath, gray streaks across his knuckles. He pulled the stone free, set it aside. From the dark hollow came the little leather journal, edges singed from the old fire. He sat back on the floor and held it. His mouth was dry. The leather stuck to his palm. He flipped the strap, opened it slowly. The first pages were filled with loops of words, scribbles of half-thoughts from a girl who still believed in drawing what she saw. Faces of dogs, the crooked barn, a stick figure holding a bucket. Then the last page. He froze. A drawing of a man on a roof. Not a child's stick figure anymore, but sharper, darker, pressed hard into the paper. Mouth wide open, sound curling out like smoke. Beneath it, her handwriting, uneven, jagged from the fever. He'll come. He'll fix it from the inside. The father's chest heaved. He slammed the journal shut, pressed it against his forehead. His breath came rough. "You did this," he muttered. He turned toward the whistler. "You put this in her head." The man didn't move, just hummed, soft, steady. The father stood, fists clenching at his sides. "Get out," he barked. "You hear me? Get the hell out." The whistle didn't stop. He stepped closer. "I said leave." The man didn't even look at him. He sat still, back straight, humming that same damn tune into the stone mouth of the fireplace. The sound seemed to vibrate the ashes, stirring them like breath. The father grabbed a poker from beside the hearth and slammed it against the brick. The clang echoed through the room. "Stop it!" The whistle faltered for just a second, then picked back up. Same pace, same key. The father's voice broke. "She made that up. She made it up in her bed when she couldn't speak anymore. Don't you dare sit there and act like you own it." The man didn't answer. He leaned closer to the hearth, lips near the ash, humming softer now, like he was whispering to someone inside the stone. The father's knees weakened. He dropped onto the chair, head falling into his hands. The whistle went on. He looked back at the journal on the floor. Open again. The drawing stared up at him. The man on the roof. The mouth opened wide, the curling smoke. He couldn't look away. His daughter's words scraped through his head. "He'll fix it from the inside." The father pressed his palms to his ears, but the whistle crawled right through. It wasn't outside anymore. It was in the marrow. He shot up again, voice hoarse. "I'll drag you out myself." He stepped toward the man. His hand twitched like he might swing the poker. The whistler finally turned his head, just a little, eyes pale and distant, as if he weren't seeing the father at all, but something behind him. Then he returned to humming, never stopping. The father felt the fight drain from him, replaced by something worse. Fear nodded low, not of the man, but of the sound. It wasn't just a tune, it was a memory made solid. His daughter's voice, twisted and borrowed. He backed away, stumbled into the chair again. His hands shook. He whispered, "You're not her. You're not." The whistler went on. Hours bled by. The sun shifted across the floor, gold to gray. Still the man sat. Still he hummed. Never eating, never drinking, never blinking long enough for the father to catch him at it. By dusk the room had grown colder. Ash smell thickened, as though the fire had burned all day, though no flame touched the wood. The father pulled the journal close to his chest, eyes locked on the man. Finally he rasped, "What do you want?" The whistle never wavered. The father closed his eyes. His daughter's last night replayed behind them. Her lips cracked, her voice gone. Just that strange little tune she pressed into the air like it carried her breath with it. He had begged her to stop, begged her to save her strength, but she wouldn't. And when the tune ended, so did she. Now it filled the room again. Endless. By the time the last light drained out of the window, the father was still in the chair, broken quiet. The man was still on the floor, cross-legged before the ashes, humming until dusk settled into night, steady and merciless. He couldn't stand it anymore. The humming had gone on until the house felt hollow, until his own heartbeat seemed to drag behind its rhythm. When the last of dusk sank into black, he shoved his coat across his shoulders and slammed the door. The whistler didn't rise, didn't follow. He stayed by the hearth, steady, soundless except for that tune crawling through the stones. The father walked hard through the dark, boots pounding dirt, breath ragged. He didn't carry a lantern. I didn't need one. He knew the path by memory. The cold cut his throat as he climbed the ridge, cutting across fields that hadn't grown corn since before the girl was born. His fists clenched tight, the journal still pressed against his chest inside his coat. At the end of the ridge stood a cabin, crooked against the trees, a lantern glowing weak in its window. He didn't knock. He kicked the door wide. The widow sat at her table, gray hair unbound, shawl around her shoulders. She didn't startle. She only looked up slow, eyes clouded, but sharp enough. "You've come late," she said. He slammed the door behind him. "You knew her. You knew my girl." "I did. She talked to you." His voice shook. "She said things I didn't understand." The widow folded her hands on the table. "She had dreams. She spoke to them plainly. You didn't listen." He took a step closer, voice cracking. "She said there'd be a song. Said it'd wake what's buried. What does that mean?" The widow tilted her head. Her eyes flickered toward the hearth in her own cabin, dark, unused. She wasn't wrong. "Don't talk circles with me," he snapped. "There's a man in my house right now, sitting by the chimney, whistling the same tune she sang on her last breath. Don't tell me that's nothing." The widow's face didn't shift. "I told her once. Chimneys carry more than heat. They breathe. They draw out what's inside. And if you've put silence in your house, the chimney will find it and pull it loose." The father shook his head, pacing. "You're saying what? That stone can talk. That ash can sing. I'm saying houses remember. Yours remembers too much." He stopped pacing, glared at her. "Too much what?" She didn't answer right away. She poured water from a clay jug into 2 cups, pushed one across the table. He didn't take it. Finally, she said, "You built that house for her mother. You swore it clean, but clean houses still breathe what their walls have seen. And yours has seen more than a girl dying in bed." His jaw tightened. "Don't. You buried things under that roof. Secrets, lies, shame." He slammed his hand against the table, rattling the cups. "She was 6 years old." The widow didn't flinch. "Children hear what walls keep. They hum it in their sleep." His throat closed. He pulled the journal from his coat and slapped it down on the table. She drew him. Before he came. Before she died. How'd she know? The widow opened the book. Her fingers lingered on the last page. She traced the lines of the figure on the roof, the open mouth, the curling smoke. She whispered, "She said he'd come." The father leaned forward, desperate. "Who is he? What is he?" The widow shut the journal, slow and heavy. "He's not a man in the way you mean. He's what the house calls when it can't keep the silence anymore. He doesn't fix roofs. He doesn't fix bricks. He fixes the truth." The father's face twisted. Truth doesn't hum in a chimney. Number but guilt does. He shoved back from the table, shaking his head. "I didn't hurt her. I didn't." The widow's voice was calm, cold. "Not with your hands, but houses don't care about hands. They care about what's been buried inside them. And your house." She leaned forward, her eyes sharp now. "Your house has kept too much." He turned toward the door, breathing hard. "You're mad. Old and mad. You came here because you already know I'm not." He stopped at the door, gripping the frame so hard the wood groaned. "If he doesn't leave, I'll burn the house down." The widow's voice followed him like smoke. "Fire won't silence him. Fire feeds him." He spat into the dirt outside, heart pounding. He wanted to shout back, wanted to curse her, but the words caught. He stumbled down the ridge, fists tight. Behind him, the widow's lantern flickered. Her voice called once more, quiet but clear. She said the song would wake what's buried. Be ready when it does. The father didn't look back. He stormed through the fields, faster, harder, until the chimney of his own house cut against the night sky. The whistle reached him before he reached the door, thin, steady, waiting. He stood in the yard, chest heaving, staring at the glow from his windows. Inside, the man still sat by the hearth, humming, and the house seemed to hum with him. He stood in the yard for a long while before he could make himself go inside. The windows glowed faintly, but not from the firelight. From something else, something that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the tune. His boots felt heavier with every step toward the door. By the time he pushed it open, his breath was shallow, his palms wet. The whistler hadn't moved, still cross-legged before the hearth, back straight, head lowered as though the bricks themselves were listening. The tune spilled out soft, but it didn't stop at the chimney now. It seeped. It wound through the walls like water through cracks, low and steady. The father pressed his shoulder to the door frame. His whole house seemed alive with it. The beams in the ceiling hummed faintly. The floorboards beneath his boots gave a faint vibration like strings plucked from below. He muttered under his breath, "God help me." He moved down the hall. Every step was worse than the last. The tune followed him, slipping through plaster and nail, finding corners it had no right to find. At the end of the hall was the door he hadn't touched in months. His daughter's room. He stopped outside it, hand hovering over the knob. The smell reached him before he opened it. Burnt cloth, singed and sour, the same stench that filled the air the night he carried her out in blankets. His knees bent under him, but he forced the knob, pushed the door wide. The room was dark, curtains drawn, but the tune was loudest here, louder than anywhere else. He stepped inside, his throat tightened. The bed was still made, blankets stiff with dust. The air pressed down heavy, thick with the smell of ash. He ran a hand along the wall, rough plaster beneath faded wallpaper. His fingers stopped on something uneven. He pulled his hand back and saw faint streaks of black rubbed faintly into the paper. He leaned close. It was charcoal. He grabbed at the wallpaper, tearing strips with his nails. They ripped with a dry shriek. Beneath, the plaster was covered in smudged lines, hand-drawn, uneven. Notes. Musical notes scrawled in the same crooked marks she'd left in her journal. He staggered back, heart hammering. No. The notes covered the whole wall, scrawled over each other, dark and frantic. Some half erased, some layered heavy until the plaster cracked. It was her handwriting, her drawing. He pressed his hand against it, voice breaking. "I sealed this room." The whistle didn't stop. It grew. It echoed through the drawings, as if the plaster itself remembered her hand and wanted to sing it back. He backed into the hall, staring. The sound crawled over him, filling his ears until it drowned his own breath. He shouted toward the hearth. "Stop it!" The tune carried on, smooth and unbroken. He ran back to the main room. The whistler was still there, head bent, lips parted just enough for the sound to pour out. Not tired, not wavering. The father slammed a fist against the wall. "I said stop." The whistle didn't falter. He staggered closer. That was her room. "You hear me? She wrote on those walls when I wasn't looking. I covered it. I sealed it. I locked it up so it wouldn't eat me alive. And you," he choked, "you dragged it back out." The man didn't raise his head. His hum filled the hearth like smoke. The father crouched, face twisted. "What are you? Why her? Why me?" The whistler's shoulders rose once with breath. Then the tune shifted, higher, softer, almost tender. The father's eyes watered. It wasn't just the sound anymore. It was memory. His daughter's lips forming those notes in the dark. Sweat on her brow. Eyes unfocused, still humming until her body couldn't hold it. He stumbled backward, collapsing into the chair. His chest rose fast. He muttered to himself, "I sealed that room. I sealed it." The chimney moaned with the whistle. The walls carried it. The floor thrummed. His whole house was singing. He pressed his hands to his ears. The sound pushed through anyway. It wasn't just music. It was her. It was the house. It was everything he'd tried to bury. He shouted again, voice raw, "Get out of my house!" The whistler didn't move. He stayed where he was, steady, endless. The tune bled through walls and wood, wrapping the house tight until silence had no place left. The father sat shaking, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the hearth. His voice came out small. "I sealed it for a reason." The man hummed on. The house hummed with him. And the father felt the walls begin to breathe. The floor creaked beneath his boots, louder than it ever had. He knew every groan, every knot of the boards. But now the sound felt different, like the house itself wanted him to stop walking. He didn't. He paced hard across the room, the whistle still circling the chimney, still seeping through the walls like smoke. His eyes kept drifting down to the warped plank near the hearth, the one he'd hammered flat years ago. He knelt, ran his hand across it. The wood gave back a faint vibration, like the hum was inside it. His stomach twisted. He shoved his fingers under the edge, pulled hard. The nails screeched one by one until the board tore loose in his hands. Ash and dust spilled out from the gap. Inside lay a small bundle, cloth wrapped, tied tight with string. His throat locked. He pulled it free, hands trembling. The cloth left gray stains across his fingers. He sat back on the floor and untied it. Inside was an envelope, yellowed, sealed, never mailed. His name written on the front in a hand he knew too well. He held it like it might bite him. He ripped it open. The paper crackled. His daughter's handwriting crawled across the page, uneven, fevered, but clear enough to choke him. To the sheriff. His eyes blurred as he read on. He takes me to the creek house. He says, "Don't tell. I didn't want to go. I didn't come back. I thought if I sang, he couldn't hear me cry. But he did. He always did. If I don't come back, it was him. My father." The words stuck like nails in his throat. His hands shook so hard he nearly dropped the page. He pressed his forehead against it, breath ragged, heart hammering. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." The whistle didn't stop. It grew softer, almost patient, like it was listening. He crumpled forward onto his knees, clutching the letter to his chest. His voice cracked. I never touched her. I never." His words broke off. The whistle stretched higher. He looked back at the man by the hearth, still cross-legged, still humming, head bowed. The sound filled the room but left just enough space for his voice. "You planted this," the father shouted. "You put this under my floor." The man didn't move. The hum deepened, rolled through the floor, through the hollow gap where the board had been. The father thought he heard her voice caught inside it, faint, begging. He slammed his fist into the wood. "I didn't hurt her. She was mine. My blood. She drew, she sang, she laughed at the river. I kept her safe." His chest heaved. "I kept her safe." He looked back at the paper. The words stared up, heavy, black. "I didn't come back." His vision blurred. His head spun. He whispered, "You lied, baby. You lied." The house answered with another wave of humming, steady and low, like denial. He stood shaking, clutching the letter in one hand. He stumbled toward the whistler, towering over him, his face twisted with fury and grief. "You think this proves something? You think a fevered hand scratching at paper tells the truth?" He thrust the page in the man's face. "Say something. Say you wrote it. Say you planted it." The man didn't lift his head. His lips barely parted, still feeding the endless tune. The father dropped the letter at his feet. "You hear me? You're nothing. You're not her. You're not me. You're nothing." His voice cracked, weak at the edges. He stepped back, collapsed into the chair, staring at the boards he'd pulled up. His eyes wouldn't leave the gap in the floor. He saw her sitting there, knees pulled to her chest, journal in her lap, charcoal staining her fingers. He saw her looking up at him, eyes dim. "He took me to the creek house." His whole body shuddered. He pressed both hands over his ears, but the whistle climbed higher, threading under his palms, weaving into his blood. He screamed, raw and broken. "Stop it! Please! Just stop it!" The man's hum fell soft again, steady, patient, unending. The father dropped from the chair to his knees, pressing his forehead to the floorboards. His hands clawed at the wood. His voice came out low. "I didn't come back as a whole either." The house trembled with sound. The chimney groaned. The wallpaper in the hall seemed to quiver. He stayed there on his knees until his strength left him, until his breath thinned. The letter lay open in the dust, the words staring up, black and certain. And the whistle never stopped. He hadn't slept. The whistle kept curling through the floorboards, leaking out of the chimney like breath from a mouth too tired to lie. The letter stayed on the table, unfolded, flattened by the weight of a mug he hadn't touched. The fire never lit. The room stayed cold. He sat in the same chair, boots planted, arms limp. He hadn't moved since dropping to his knees the night before. The whistle was quieter now, almost still, like the house had stopped arguing. But it never ended. just circled, low, watchful. Then came the knock. Not hard, not rushed. Just a quiet knock against the door frame, like someone knocking who already knew the door was unlocked. He looked up slowly. The sheriff stood outside, hat in one hand. The other rested on his belt like he was just stretching his back. "You've got noises in that chimney?" he asked. The father didn't answer. The sheriff stepped in without being invited, shut the door behind him. His eyes drifted to the whistler, still by the hearth, still cross-legged, still humming that same bone-deep sound like it belonged to him. He gave a short nod, like he already knew he'd be there. The sheriff sniffed once. "The house smells old." The father's voice came out hoarse. "You knew." The sheriff didn't deny it, just looked around like he was checking to see what had changed since he'd last been inside. "Didn't think you'd ever call him." "I didn't." "Doesn't matter. He comes when the walls stop holding." The father's eyes narrowed. "You knew she wrote that letter." The sheriff's mouth twitched. "She didn't mail it." "She tried." The sheriff walked slowly to the hearth. The whistler didn't acknowledge him, just kept humming, one boot tapping now, soft against the ash stone. The sound echoed faintly in the corners. The sheriff crouched down beside him. "He's not here for punishment," the sheriff said. "He's here for memory." "I don't want his memory," the father muttered. The sheriff didn't turn. "Don't matter what you want. He doesn't come for the willing. He comes for what you tried to bury under the floor." The father stood, voice sharper. "You let her write that letter, and you did nothing." The sheriff turned slow, eyes dark. "You think I didn't read it? You think I didn't carry that weight too? You could have stopped it. So could you." They stood across the room from each other, the whistle tightening between them like wire. The sheriff stepped closer. "I ain't clean," he said, voice low. "But neither are you. You brought her back from that creek house like nothing happened. You told folks she had a fever. You shut the door on her room and poured concrete over what she was trying to scream." "I didn't touch her," the father said. The sheriff didn't blink. "You didn't protect her either." Silence folded around the room. The whistler tapped his boot again. The father's hands curled into fists. "What's he here to do?" he asked. "Whatever the house needs done." The father's voice broke. "And if I burn it down?" The sheriff gave a small smile. "Then the next house you build will carry the same song." The father stepped forward. "You're scared of him." "I'm scared of what he brings up." The firebox let out a long groan. The chimney shifted. A bit of soot fell down into the grate. The sheriff sighed. "You want my advice?" "No." He gave it anyway. "Don't dig further. You start pulling at threads. You won't just find your girl's cries. You'll find the ones that came before her." The father stared at him. "And you." The sheriff turned toward the door. "I already hear them." He walked to the threshold, paused, hat in hand. "He's not just a man. He's every word you swallowed, every time you said, 'She's just tired,' every moment you walked away when she needed you to stay." The father didn't move. The sheriff looked back one more time. He doesn't leave till the house tells him to. Then he stepped out, door shutting soft behind him. Inside, the whistle shifted the key. The father looked at the whistler, whose boot still tapped ash. He wanted to scream, to throw something, to run. Instead, he sat. Same chair, same silence. The tune rose again, slow and full, and the house remembered more than it ever had. The house didn't sleep that night. It breathed slowly through the rafters, groaned when he moved, hummed even when the whistler stopped. He stood in front of the fireplace, eyes fixed on the black stone mouth, heatless and dry. The sheriff's words hung in his skull like wet ropes. "Don't dig further." He dropped to his knees anyway. The whistler sat just a few feet away, back to the wall, humming. It was different now, quicker, not gentle, almost frantic. The rhythm pounded like hooves or fists or screams. The father placed his hands against the chimney bricks, cold, rough. The mortar cracked beneath his touch. He braced his fingers and pulled. The brick didn't move. He slammed the heel of his palm against it. Again. His skin split. Blood streaked the stone. The whistler didn't stop. He clawed at the mortar, fingernails raw. Bits of red dust filled his mouth. His breath came hard. He punched until one brick cracked free. He yanked it out with both hands, coughing. Soot spilled across his chest. Behind the first brick was another, looser. He tore it out too. The wall gave out a little. He leaned in, peering through the narrow gap. Darkness. He reached inside. His hand brushed cloth. He pulled. It was a child's shoe, leather warped by heat, black at the toe. The sole split wide like it had screamed. He stared at it, hand shaking. It was hers. He knew it was hers. The whistle behind him twisted. He reached in again, dug deeper. His knuckles hit something soft. Fabric. He pulled again. A ribbon. Braided. Burned at the end. He closed his eyes, fingers gripping it too hard. "She wore this," he said, voice cracking. "Every Sunday." The humming rose. He reached in once more. His hand slid over something dry, curved, smooth. He paused. Then he pulled. A bone. Small. Charred. He dropped it. The hum shrieked. The whistler tipped his head back. The tune tore loose now, fast and wrong, like something unraveling. The chimney moaned, deep and guttural. Soot spilled out onto the floor. "She's still in there," the father whispered. He backed away. His hands bled onto the floor. The ribbon clung to his fingers. He turned to the firebox, staring into the darkness. "She's still in there," he said again. The whistler's hum warped further, like it couldn't decide whether to weep or burn. The father collapsed to the floor, chest heaving. He rocked back and forth, whispering her name. Not her full name, just the one he used when she cried at night. "Sweet girl," he said. "Sweet, sweet girl." The chimney coughed again. Ash spilled down. He crawled back to the opening, pushed his hand deeper. It scraped against something sharp. He didn't care. He grabbed it. More bone. Another ribbon. A button from her coat. He let go. Fall backward. The bones clattered behind the hearth. The whistler stopped humming. Silence fell. For the first time in days, true silence. He turned slowly. The man was no longer sitting. He stood now, facing the fire, hands at his sides. The father rose to his knees. "Is that it?" The man didn't answer. The house creaked above them. Then the whistle started again. Software slow. The same tune. The same one she sang with her last breath. The father reached for the bricks. He started stacking them again, one by one. He whispered as he worked, voice low, steady. "I didn't bring her back from the creek house. I brought her to it." The tune rose. "I left her there for hours. Then I said nothing." The bricks clacked together. She cried the whole ride home. I told her to stop. I told her to hush. I told her she was fine. He pressed another brick into place. She stopped singing after that. The whistler's boots scraped forward. The father didn't look up. He pressed his bloody palms to the brick face, leaning into the hearth like a man praying to his own guilt. "I didn't bury her there," he said. But something about her stayed. The man stood behind him now. The hum fell quiet. The father turned, eyes rimmed with soot. "Will she forgive me?" The whistler said nothing. The house didn't answer, but the firebox groaned again, and the chimney breathed out. The house was empty. He felt it before he opened his eyes. No whistle, no footstep, just the long ache of stillness. The chimney didn't groan. The walls didn't hum. It was all just air. He sat up slow, bones stiff from the floor. The ribbon lay on the hearth where he'd dropped it last night. No breeze moved it. The firebox was still blackened from the ash he'd pulled the bones from. But the man, the whistler, was gone. The chair was empty. The boots were gone. Not a sound. He stood, waited for something to echo back. Nothing did. The silence felt wrong. He grabbed the ribbon and shoved it in his pocket, heart already knowing where to go. His feet moved faster than his thoughts. Out the front door, down the slope, past the place where the sheriff had stood with too many truths in his mouth, past the barn that never held enough warmth, down the trail behind the ridge, toward the place he'd sealed off in his memory, the creek house. It had been years since he came here, years since he let his eyes meet the wood, the slope, the bank. But now, the whistle wasn't calling him. It was dragging him. The trail narrowed near the bend. He pushed through brittle branches, dead vines clinging to his coat like they remembered him. The house came into view. It leaned like it wanted to fall, but didn't have the strength. The porch sagged. One shutter hung by a single nail. The river behind it moved slowly and cold, gray like a mirror that never showed your own face back. He paused. "I brought her here once," he said aloud. The trees didn't move. Nothing rustled. No birds. "Just once," he repeated, lower now. His boots creaked across the old porch. The door still hung crooked. He pressed a hand to it. It swung open with a whisper. Inside, rot had eaten everything. The floor had caved in one corner. The roof dripped in two places. He stared at the wall where she'd leaned all those years ago, trembling, confused. He'd told her it was nothing. Told her it'd be over fast. Told her it was just a grown-up thing. He gripped the doorframe hard. The house was small. It still smelled like wet wood and guilt. He stepped inside. Her laugh had echoed here once, high and uncertain. He'd snapped at her to hush. She did. He moved through the room without looking at anything directly, like if he didn't meet its eyes, it couldn't remember him. Out the back, down the slope, the river came into full view. It bent sharp around a stone shelf. He remembered the sound it made that day. Not loud, just steady. The kind of sound a child might try to outsing. He stood at the bank now, boots at the edge. The water was bubbling. He frowned. It wasn't boiling. It wasn't rushing. It was rising in small pulses, like breath from under the surface. A shape, maybe. A ripple. Then, the sound. Not the whistle. A voice. A child's voice. Calling his name. He staggered backward. The voice called again. Higher this time. Closer. He collapsed to one knee. The ground was damp, soaked from a night that never rained. The voice whispered, "You left me in the water." He grabbed the edge of the bank. His nails dug into the roots. "I didn't," he whispered back. "I brought you home." The river bubbled harder. The voice rose. "You left me in the water." He yanked the ribbon from his pocket, held it in both hands. The burnt edge still curled. It smelled like a hearth, like her hair. "I carried you," he said. "You were tired. I carried you. I wrapped you in that blanket." The voice softened. "You forgot me." His eyes welled. "Number I buried the smell of this place. That's not the same." The water frothed. "You told me to be quiet," the voice said. "So I stayed quiet." He sobbed. His whole body shook. "I didn't know it would echo." The ribbon slipped from his hands. A breeze took it, gentle and cold. It floated across the surface. The water stilled just long enough for it to touch down. It didn't drift. It sank. Straight down. No ripples. No sound. Gone. He dropped to both knees, pressed his hands to the wet ground. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I hear you now." The river gave no answer. The bubbling stopped. The air grew heavy, but something lifted in him, like a knot loosened just a little. The trees stood still. The sky stayed gray. The house behind him leaned, but his heart didn't. Not anymore. He knelt there long after the voice faded. The ribbon was gone, but the silence she left behind finally had shape, and it sounded like the truth. The door creaked open before he touched the handle. He stepped across the threshold slowly, boots thick with river mud, heart still raw from the voice by the bend. The house was dark, cold. The whistle was gone, but the silence it left behind felt worse. He wiped his hands on his coat, even though they were already clean. The ribbon was no longer in his pocket. The bank had taken it. The river kept what it claimed. Inside, he knew before his eyes adjusted, someone was sitting at the table. The sheriff, hat in his lap, rifle leaning against the chair. He didn't move when the father entered, didn't greet him, just sat in the shadows, quiet, like he belonged to the furniture now. The father shut the door behind him. "You let yourself in." The sheriff didn't flinch. "Didn't think I'd be locked out. Not from a house I helped protect." "You didn't protect anything." The sheriff gave a half smile. "Didn't protect her, no, but I protected your name, your silence. You kept your hands clean, paid us to keep dirtier." The father crossed the room slowly. His legs were tired, joints heavy from kneeling on riverbanks and memories. "I didn't pay you." "You paid in favors, in quiet. You kept working the forge like nothing happened. You gave the town a man they could believe in. That buys silence. I didn't ask for that." "You didn't refuse it either." They stared across the table at each other. Between them lay the remains of last night's ash, cold, flat. The hearth hadn't been lit in days, but the room still smelled of smoke. The sheriff finally spoke again, voice lower now. "I told you not to dig. You did anyway." "I had to." The sheriff nodded. "And did you find what she buried?" "No," the father said. "I found what I buried." He moved to the hearth, knelt by the firebox, pulled out a single log, dry and light. He laid it on the grate, struck a match. The flame bloomed fast, desperate for air. The sheriff leaned back, watching. "What are you doing?" The father stood and walked to the shelf by the door, pulled down a small iron box. I opened it. Inside, the badge, worn, faded, still glinting beneath dust. He turned to the sheriff. "Have you ever thought about turning this in?" The sheriff stared. "Once." Then I remembered what it means here. Ain't justice, ain't order, it's permission. The father tossed it once in his hand, weighing it. Then he walked to the fire and threw it in. The metal hissed, then cracked against the heat. The sheriff didn't blink. "Well," he said, "that's a kind of confession. It's the only one you'll get." They stood in silence, flame dancing between them. Then came the sound. Not a whistle, just the creak of the back room door opening. The sheriff turned sharp. "That you?" "No." From the shadows stepped the whistler, still, silent, eyes like riverbed stone. He carried something in his hand. Paper, folded once. Edges are soft. The father knew what it was before he saw it clearly. The letter, the one his daughter wrote, the one addressed to the sheriff. The whistler didn't hand it to him. He placed it on the table. Then I stepped back. The sheriff looked at it, didn't touch it. "I read it once," he said. "Didn't act on it," the father replied. "She didn't mail it." "She tried." The whistler didn't speak, just stood near the hearth, the glow licking the edge of his coat. The sheriff picked up the letter. I opened it, read the first line. Then he folded it and set it in the fire beside the badge. This time the father moved fast. He reached in with the poker, yanked the paper out before the flames caught fully. The edge curled, but the words still showed. He handed it back to the whistler. "She wrote it. It stays." The sheriff stood now, voice flat. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. You brought me here." "I didn't summon you," the father said. "She did." The whistler looked at them both, then turned toward the door. He paused only once, and finally spoke. 4 words. His voice was like the hush before a thunderclap. "This house belongs to her now." The door opened. The wind blew in. Then he was gone. The sheriff sat back down, stunned. The fire cracked, but no one moved. The letter stayed on the table this time. The badge stayed buried in flame. And the father sat down across from the lawman who hadn't protected a girl. Neither man spoke again that night, but the house did, softly, with every breath of the chimney, with every groan of the beams. It whispered her name. The fire burned strangely that night. It didn't crack or pop, just flickered, quiet and steady, like it had learned something about restraint. The house was still. The sheriff had gone without a word. The door never latched behind him, but the wind didn't come through. Just a low warmth, like breath under the floorboards. The father sat at the table. The letter lay beside him, unread now. He didn't need to see the words again. They lived behind his eyes. The whistler hadn't returned, not by foot, not in sound. The house was his now, but not in body, only in memory. He looked toward the hearth. The light danced higher. Something shifted. There was movement, small, steady, rhythmic. He blinked once. There was a girl sitting cross-legged by the chimney. Not a ghost, not quite. Her hair was darker than he remembered, longer too, but he knew the slope of her shoulders, the way her hands curled into her lap. The soft hum rising from her lips wasn't the whistler's tune. It was hers. Quieter, raw, new. He stood, slowly, heart caught behind his ribs. She didn't look up right away, just stared into the fire, head tilted like she was listening to it say something back. Then she spoke. "You remember me now." His throat closed. He tried to answer, but no words came. Her voice came again. "You should sit." He did. Same chair, same corner of the room, same fire between them. She didn't move. He watched her hum, the sound curling up the flue like it belonged there. "I never stopped remembering you," he said finally. "You buried me," she replied. "I didn't know how else to keep going." She looked up then. Her eyes weren't angry, just steady, patient, like they'd waited long enough and didn't mind waiting a little more. He leaned forward. "Are you her?" "I was." "Are you still?" The hum deepened. She didn't answer. "I heard you by the river," he whispered. "I followed your voice." She nodded once. "You finally listened." "I should have listened before." "Yes," she said. The fire flared, not hot, just wide. She turned to it, held her hands near the edge. He watched the flame reflect in her fingers. "What are you now?" he asked. She didn't answer at first, just kept her hands near the light. "I'm what stayed," she said, "after everything else was thrown away." "The letter," he said. "The one you wrote. He read it. Then I burned it." "But you saved it." "I did. That's why I'm here." He sat back, let the words settle. The house didn't hum anymore. It just breathed. "You forgive me?" he asked. She didn't look away from the fire. "You want that?" "I don't deserve it," he said. "But yes, I want it." She hummed again. The tune circled soft, not the same one he'd heard from the whistler. This one had spaces in it, breaks, hesitation, like it was remembering itself while it played. He leaned forward again. "What do you want from me?" "I want nothing now," she said. The house took enough already. He looked down at his hands. The blood had faded, but the skin still bore the cracks. She shifted slightly. "Will you stay?" he asked. "No," she said. He nodded. "I didn't think you would." She reached out, touched the bricks beside her. Her fingers moved across the soot like she was tracing notes only she could see. The chimney gave a low groan, deep inside. Her eyes flicked toward the back room. "He left." "I know. He's not far." "He never is." The tune stopped. She stood. The light flickered again, and for a moment he saw her how she had been. Tiny, in that too big dress, hair tied with a ribbon he never knew how to braid. She smiled, faint. "I left a part of me here. I don't need it anymore." His voice shook. "Can I keep it?" "If you'll listen to it." "I will." She nodded. The fire flared again. Behind her, the shadow on the wall deepened, taller now. Not hers, not his. The shape of the whistler returned, not as flesh, but as an outline. His song wasn't needed anymore. It was hers now. She stepped toward the shadow, and it stepped back, dissolving into the wall like smoke drawn up through stone. He stood, almost running. "Wait, just wait." She turned once. Her voice was soft. "I'm not leaving you. I'm just going somewhere quieter." Then she was gone. The fire didn't flicker anymore. It just burned, slow, even, like it had found peace. He stood there long after the light dimmed. He didn't call out, didn't cry. He just listened, and for once the silence didn't hurt. He didn't speak much after that night. There wasn't anything left that needed words. Each evening he sat by the hearth with his hands folded and his back straight. He didn't bring tools to fix anything. Didn't open the forge, didn't answer knocks, not that they came often anymore. The neighbors kept their distance. A few walked the long way around his fields. Others crossed themselves when they passed the fence. The store clerk stopped asking why he hadn't been in town. Folks knew something was off. Something is wrong with the bones of the place. But they didn't ask, because the house hummed now. Not always loud, not enough to make the windows shake or the chimney rattle, but soft, steady, just below hearing. Like a lullaby trapped in the walls. Like a memory made sound. He didn't mind it. At night, when the wind pressed against the windows and the coals cracked in the firebox, the tune rose. The same melody the girl had hummed by the chimney. Sometimes high, sometimes low, but never broken. Always whole. The girl didn't speak. She returned each night, always the same, sitting cross-legged by the fire, hands still, head tilted like she could hear more than anyone else. She never looked directly at him anymore. I didn't need to. Her presence filled the room like the hum. She didn't ask questions. I didn't need answers. She just stayed. The town whispered, of course. They said he'd gone mad, that the whistler cursed the place, that the house itself had turned. Then the sheriff's office burned. It happened 2 nights after the letter disappeared. Smoke rose behind the chapel and lit the sky with a faint red haze. The building crumbled slowly, no one rushing to put it out. No bucket lines, no cries for help, just quiet watching, as if the town already knew it needed to burn. By morning, there was nothing left but badge metal and scorched wood. He watched the smoke from his porch, said nothing, rocked slowly in the old chair. The girl sat beside the hearth inside, humming. The widow left town soon after. No announcement, no wagon piled with goods. Just her front door swinging open one morning, curtain torn loose in the wind, and her cabin empty by dusk. No one claimed to see her leave. No one admitted to helping her pack. But the father found something on his step that night, a wrapped bundle of dried herbs and a note tied in string. The handwriting was firm. She's not haunting. She's holding it steady. He kept the bundle near the hearth. The girl never acknowledged it. The days blurred after that. People stopped waving. The post stopped coming. No one asked if he was eating. No one questioned why his chimney glowed even when the skies were warm. They left him alone, and the house kept humming. Sometimes he'd find small things changed. A stone turned on the porch, a name carved faint in the beam beside the window. Her name, not deep, not angry, just there. Some mornings the ribbon was back, curled on the table, or resting on the fire grate, burned edge and all. He never touched it, just let it stay wherever it showed up. One night, the hum rose louder than usual. It pulsed. The girl sat by the chimney, eyes shut, lips parted, no words, just the sound. The floorboards groaned in rhythm. He reached out once, not to grab her, just to feel the warmth near her hand. She didn't flinch, but she didn't respond either. He pulled back. She's not haunting. He said to no one, she's still here. The house didn't answer, but it didn't need to. The chimney glowed soft orange. The fire is steady, never wild. The hum filled the gaps in his chest. Where grief had settled, the tune now lived. He didn't need to confess anymore. I didn't need to explain. Every crack in the wall already knew. Every step in the hallway remembered. The girl never left the hearth again. Never aged. Never blinked. She didn't need to. She was the song now. The man just listened. The morning. It happened. The sky was clear. No wind, no bird song. Just light. Soft and even, like it had been poured instead of risen. The father woke as he always did, sitting up from the chair by the hearth, stiff bones groaning. The fire had gone out during the night. The girl was gone too. No humming, no shadow, no warmth by the chimney. He rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hand. Something felt wrong. He looked toward the hallway. The walls had started to split. The wallpaper was curling, revealing more of the charcoal scrawls underneath. The notes, the figures, the words she'd drawn and buried behind plaster. The air carried the scent of dry ash, not smoke, as if the burning had already happened and just hadn't told him yet. He stood slowly. The chimney moaned. The sound wasn't the old hum. It was deeper, heavier, like stone remembering its own collapse. The girl didn't appear. No whistler, just him. He took one step toward the door. The floor cracked under his heel. Not groaned, cracked. A split that ran beneath the boards and echoed through the walls. Dust fell from the rafters. The house sighed once, long and tired. Then it dropped. Not all at once. First the far room caved inward, walls folding like soaked paper. Then the ceiling. Then the floor beneath his feet groaned again, and he stepped back just as a beam snapped clean through and dropped into the crawl space. He turned and ran for the door. The front wall folded as he reached it. He dove through as the roof came down behind him. The sound wasn't loud, just final. The house collapsed into itself. Brick, wood, memory, all pulled downward like it had grown tired of holding on. The chimney went last, brick by brick, until all that remained was the hearthstone, still standing, still warm. He lay in the dirt, coughing. When he rose, he didn't cry. He didn't scream. He only turned to the hearth, blackened but upright. It stood like a monument to something no one but him had ever fully seen. Smoke still rose from the ashes, slow and steady. In the center, untouched by fire or falling timber, lay the ribbon. The same ribbon he'd seen 100 times in 100 different places. Whole now. No burn, no fray. Just red, soft, waiting. He picked it up. Didn't speak. I didn't need to. He turned from the ruins, walked down past the gate that no longer existed, across the path where the forge used to clang, through the thinning woods, and toward the bend in the river. The same trail he'd followed when he heard her voice. The earth was damp. The trees leaned forward as if to listen. When he reached the riverbank, he didn't kneel. He stood tall, hands loose at his sides. The water moved slow today, wide and still, like glass stretched thin. No bubbles, no whispers, just current, just time. He took the ribbon and pressed it once to his lips, then let it go. It floated down, spinning slowly. twirling, then sinking. Not fast, not forced, just gone. He whispered, "She's free now." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. The trees behind him stood quiet. Then a sound. Not from the chimney, not from the hearth, not from the house that no longer stood. From the woods. A whistle. Same tune, same pace, same key. But it wasn't haunting. It wasn't calling him back. It was closing something. A door. A wound. A loop that had stayed open far too long. He turned toward it, but he didn't walk, didn't chase, just listened. And for once the sound didn't carry shame. It carried rest. Behind him the river flowed on. The ribbon is gone. The girl is gone. The silence, finally, was real. And in that silence the tune rose one last time. Not to be feared, not to be followed, but to be finished. The land where the house once stood had gone quiet. No rebuilding, no fencing, just flattened earth and scorched grass. The hearthstone still there, dark, solid, and untouched. People kept away. Even the mail stopped. No letters, no flyers, no church invitations folded under the gate. Children whispered when they passed by the road. They said he still lived near it, though no one could say where. Said you could hear the tune if the wind cut right. He had moved to the river's edge. Built nothing. Just cleared a place near the bend. A single chair. A blanket when the nights turned sharp. He fished sometimes, ate what he caught, slept when the stars turned blue, but mostly he listened. Some days the river said nothing, just drifted. Other days it gave back her hum. Not full, not exact, just fragments woven into the rush of water. He never spoke back. He didn't whistle either. That wasn't his right. One morning, near spring, a girl wandered down the path, hair in 2 braids, a tin pail swinging from one hand. She stopped when she saw him, didn't run, just watched. "You live out here?" she asked. He nodded. "What happened to your house?" He didn't answer. She stepped closer. "Mama says you hear ghosts." "No," he said. "I hear memories." She tilted her head. "What's the difference?" "Ghosts want to stay," he said. "Memory wants to be let go." The girl blinked slowly. "Did you let it go?" "Not yet," he said. She didn't speak after that, just stared at the river with him for a while, then turned and walked back up the path, pail swinging. That night, the whistle returned, not from the woods, not from the water, from inside him. He didn't open his mouth, but he felt it. A tune curled through his ribs. It didn't demand anything, just rested there, a weight he could carry. He closed his eyes. She wasn't sitting beside him. Not this time, but the silence didn't ache. It was filled. The ribbon never floated back. The chimney never rose again. But in the hush between water and wind, the girl's hum stayed. Not haunting, no warning, just waiting. And the man who once sealed her voice inside walls now carried it like a hymn, not to be heard, only remembered.